The views expressed on the Nova Society are those of the panelists and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of the Phoenix Research Institute or any institution which any panel member is associated. Welcome back to the Nova Society, the space where dialogue deepens understanding and civic responsibility comes to life. I'm Dr. Mark Bound, joined by our regular panel, Dr. Scott Gershwer and Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon. Together, we'll unpack the stories that matter most, exploring the headlines, the history, and the big ideas shaping today's conversations. Let's dive in and hear what the panel has for us today. Brooke, what do we got?
All righty. We have a question from Mandy, who lives in Sydney, Australia. And Mandy writes, well, it looks like gun violence has come back to my country's shores. As I'm sure you are aware, we had a horrific mass shooting at Bondi Beach this past week. Yes. As I write this, we know of at least 3 dead. I believe it's 15 now, and many more injured. Once again, this seems to be directed at the Jewish community in my country. Our Prime Minister, Albanese, has classified this as an Islamic terrorist attack. Although Australia has had past incidents of mass shootings, it's been almost 30 years since the last incident. With the conflict in the Middle East still uncertain, the xenophobia currently in the US and Europe, and the general madness seemingly spreading around the world, do you see this as a trend? Should the Jewish communities around the world be concerned? Do you see any other communities that might become targets? Yeah, I do. The LGBTQA plus community, I do. And I have friends who live in Australia. They're in Queensland and in Adelaide. And the first thing I did was check with them. Are you all right? Because at least some of my friends are Jewish. And I didn't think they would be at Bondi Beach, but I just wanted to be sure that they were, not traumatized by what had happened. And of course, we saw the viral clip of Ahmed al-Ahmed, the Syrian refugee who got the long gun, I guess it would be an assault rifle, away from the father, the 50-year-old, who was shooting everybody. That was quite spectacular to see. And Ahmed himself, was unarmed. And I keep thinking about, was it at Parkland, Texas, where the the responding police were armed and they didn't want to go in because there was an active shooter, huh?
Uvalde, Texas, yeah.
Yeah, the Texas. And they didn't want to go in. And here comes this one man unarmed and got the gun away while the shooter was inactive. I mean, that was just an incredible. And he was hit twice himself, in the arm and hand, apparently. So yeah, I don't want to hear any more about, everybody should be armed, because if you're armed, then you can take care of it. Obviously, if you're armed, it's not guaranteed you're going to take care of it, because the police in Texas certainly didn't take care of it, but this man did. So Scott, what are your thoughts on this? I would say that this is an expansion of the Intifada. And there are cells in the United States. That was what I heard. There are sleeper cells now in the United States, and we can expect more of this.
Well, I'll say this to Mandy asked a question, should the Jewish communities around the world be concerned? I can tell you firsthand info, yes. Yes, we are concerned. This is the amount of anti-Semitism that has grown since the attack of Hamas on Israel in 2023. I mean, just as we've said here before, 2 days after that attack has been an astounding lesson to me in the fact that that I think anti-Semites don't like a strong Israel. They don't like strong Jews. They don't want people who could fight back. And they prefer, the traditional view of weak, politically unconnected, homeless, landless people who exist at the mercy of others. And, it's not that way anymore. Yeah.
Yeah, Dr. Gershwer, I do have a question. I saw Netanyahu, and I know neither you know, or I can abide him. Netanyahu was he lambasted the prime minister of Australia, saying, "Oh, you know, you're not protecting your Jewish community, and you know, this is terrible, and I told you so, and we need to do even more and have an even stronger response, and so on." What do you think about that? Should
Well, I'm not a Netanyahu fan, as you know. I believe that he is very bad for Israel. I don't think he did a good job keeping Israelis safe. I think that he deserves a lot of discredit and blame for what happened in 2023 in Israel, and probably bears more responsibility, certainly, than the PM of Australia does. But here's the thing. Two things can be true at once. Declaring the Palestinian state rather than negotiating for the Palestinian state serves no purpose. The Australian PM, the British, the French, whoever else stepped in there and said, we're going to recognize a Palestinian statehood, did themselves and the world a great disservice, in my opinion. This is something that needs to be discussed and has been being discussed one way or another, wars, politics by other means, for a long time now. And it would be better to do it peacefully. Certainly support that. There are solutions to the one state, two state solution, one land for two peoples, dividing it in a way that people can abide by it. Seems to me possible in this modern world. It may not look like a country in the old-fashioned sense of the word, but it would be a viable country if they would allow it to happen. And I keep coming back to this idea that if the Palestinians or the Arabs put down their weapons, there would be peace. If the Israelis put down their weapons, there would be no more Israel. I firmly believe that. They are under assault by a large, very populated source of antagonism toward them. And they need to be strong, and they need to be careful, and they need to fight hard, dirty in the way that they do, or they will not survive in this world. All right. So I'm not, Mark, I'll let you speak to this if you want. I have some more to say about Australia and America as far as guns are concerned, but I'll get to that in a minute. Why don't you start?
Well, there's nothing that you've said that I could possibly disagree with. Jewish communities around the world have always had to be concerned. I mean, it's historical. It is absolutely historical. I was reading a book about General Grant during the Civil War, who basically, in his territory that he had, expelled the Jews. Now, the reason was because he believed that they were being, cotton. They were taking advantage of the cotton prices. They were buying cheap and they were selling high, which I don't know. Sort of that's what business is all about. Buy low, sell high. Although during a time of war, I could see where that might have been an issue. But I think the Jewish community has always had to be concerned. And I don't care if you're in the United States. I don't care if you're in Australia. I don't care if you're in New Zealand, which is, nice, peaceful place. Jewish community has to always be concerned. And it is a historical, it's like a historical, I don't want to say stigma, but it's like a historical, like albatross around the Jewish community's neck, that no matter where they are, no matter where they go, they're not welcome. And now that they have their own state, there's those that would make them not welcome there, or would want to eliminate the state altogether. And yeah, the idea, Scott is probably exactly right. If it wasn't for the acknowledgement of the Palestinian state by all these countries, Canada included, I'm not going to say that this wouldn't have happened, because let's face it, a lot of times people that want to do harm to Jews don't really need a logical reason. They don't need any special permission. Um, it's kind of a funny thing. Being married to a Jewish woman myself, I see it all the time, especially here in the deep South, where the attitude toward the Jewish population is quite a bit different than, say, to my brethren, the Catholics. And it's just, to me, it's nothing I've ever been able to wrap my head around as far as why this is still such a thing. I mean, what have the Jews done so egregious to so many people? And I'm not just talking about Muslims. We're talking about the Germans. We're talking about the Americans. We're talking about, the French. We're talking about the British. And throughout history, what did they do so egregious that really, has caused them to be this seen as a pariah of society? It makes zero sense to me. I mean, absolutely none whatsoever. So I'm kind of stuck in that one. Any other communities that might become targets? I think any community that isn't your community is a target in today's world. If you're seen as the other, Jews are easy, because you're gonna, they're easy. They're their own group, and they've been persecuted for their entire history. So that's the simple one. But those other ones, I mean, I know the Catholics, when we came to the United States originally, Catholics were you were like untouchable. That's why the Knights of Columbus was created. Catholics in the late 19th century could not even bury their family because they didn't have any money, because nobody gave them a job. Canada, same way. Canada was definitely against the Catholics. So, but it's not been like the Jews. And I'll be honest, I've talked to a lot of theologians, and I have my own thought on this. My thought is that Christianity is what really caused the Jews to be basically cursed, is what I'm going to call it. And I don't mean that in a bad way, as far as, all Jews should be cursed. What I mean is that it has given them that stigma of a cursed people, and it's for no reason whatsoever. And it honest to gosh, makes me absolutely nuts.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Not only are many trying to remove us from our constitutionally limited Judeo-Christian ethos republic, more seem to be forgetting our Judeo-Christian Christitutionalist foundations. Not here at Christitutionalist. We talk about all these things: the past, the present, the future. Biblical community, Judeo-Christian ethos, the whole Bible, biblical community, not worldly communism. And there is a big difference. Join us, Christitutionalists.
I have a theory on that.
Okay.
My theory is, number one, we have a really good sense of humor. But number two, going way back, way before Christianity, okay,
Mm-hmm.
where people respected other people's gods, and they had multiple gods. You go to Babylon, they had a god. You go to Samaria, they got a god. They got gods, different gods who handle different things, and everybody was sort of like, "Oh, you got that god. He's a good god. We have a similar god to him ourselves. We got the thunder god, and we got this god and that god and all that." And the Jews came along and they said, "No, you guys don't have gods. We only have the God. We got the only God, and your guys are not gods, right?" And it's the whole Ten Commandments thing, right, where the Egyptian Pharaoh was oppressing the Jews, and Moses came in and said, "Look, we're gonna do some bad stuff to you guys. There are gonna be 10 plagues, and you're gonna have to deal with them if you don't let my people go." And, the praying to all the gods didn't help. The Jewish God dominated. And eventually the people left. And, obviously this is not history. This is myth. something a lot.
Because there were 15 commandments. Remember, Scott?
That's true. That was the commandments. Right? Yeah.
I bring you these 15 commandments. Boom. 10 commandments.
10 commandments. Yeah, exactly. But the plagues, all the plagues, and then the army chasing them, and the crossing the Sea of Reeds, and the water comes in on the Egyptians and kills them all. All of that stuff predates Christianity by thousands of years.
Yes.
And when the Romans killed Jesus and crucified him, which was a punishment of the Romans for the absolute lowest of the low. Okay. It was not an honorable death. It was an insult on top of painful death. They had to invent something when they began to adopt Christianity, which is essentially, if you think about it, a little like Judaism mixed with Greek faith or Greek gods, right? Different gods, three gods: the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost. They had to come up with something that said, we're not the same as those guys are. Christianity is different, and so anti-Semitism in the modern sense was born. But even prior to that, it's just being different enough. And you even saw Trump say this at various times, that Jews in America have more fidelity to Israel, more fealty to Israel than they do to America, which is, to me, libelous. I am an American. This is my country, and I love this country. I can't stand Trump, but I do love the country. But that there's like split loyalties, and that split loyalty means that you can't trust Jews to fight on your side when you have an enemy, trying to conquer your land. The Jews may just turn around and join them to conquer your land, which is exactly what you're talking about with General Grant. Grant didn't trust the Jews to stay out of it or be on the side of the Union. He didn't know what to make of them, and so he persecuted them. And that's been a pattern for a really long time. It's exactly what Pharaoh said. And it's exactly what the French said with the Dreyfus affair. It is exactly what Trump said just a year or so ago about Jews in America, need to support Israel and do support Israel more than the United States itself. Not true. So I think that there's that, and I think that that's it was basically just impoliteness to not acknowledge other people's gods was just too wrong for ancient cultures to remain civil to the Jews.
Actually,
Okay.
my wife has this really good theory, Scott. She blames it all on gefilte fish.
Well, I don't blame her for that.
I'm just saying. She says all the Jewish problems come from gefilte fish.
So that's a great test. Have you ever had it?
Yes.
You have?
Yeah, I went to a bat mitzvah. Of course I had it. I mean, I've been to bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs. Of course I've had it.
Yeah, but I mean, that's not the kind of thing that you would ordinarily get, I think, at a bat mitzvah or a bar mitzvah.
It was.
It's very specifically, I think, Passover thing.
Well, it's kind of like it was kind of used as an appetizer.
Yeah.
Right.
You put enough horseradish on anything, it's going to taste okay.
There you go. There you go.
It's not bad. But
I believe you mean slander. If he said it, it's slander, not libel.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Yeah, it's slanderous. But
yeah,
I agree with you. It is slander.
It's an ancient slander.
No, I've never understood either. As Mark was saying, when I was growing up, there were a couple of kids in my class, in my school, who were Jewish, and the only reason I know that they were Jewish is because they would say when it was like Christmas holiday or something like that coming up, they would say, well, what about Hanukkah? Because we celebrate Hanukkah at home. my late aunt's first husband was Jewish, and she converted to Judaism at one point, and I had her paper saying, a certificate saying that she had converted. But and one of the kids was my friend. It didn't matter to me whether she was Jewish or not. I mean, she was a friend, I mean, so I never understood what the problem that people had with someone's being Jewish or Catholic or black or Korean or Chinese. I mean, it just doesn't enter my thinking as being a problem. Who the person is as a unique human being. That's my perspective. So I don't understand. I really don't understand, and I've never understood the worldview or the paradigm of someone who is, I guess, xenophobic or bigoted, however one would put it, intolerant.
Yeah. I
just don't. And have you heard anything about, and I'm trying to remember where I heard this also from, if it was on an Australian news, I think it might have been on an Australian news program. It might have been ABC Australia, where there were concerns expressed about Islamist sleeper cells and a global intifada. And Islamist sleeper cells, for example, in the United States, and the concern being expressed by the person with whom they were speaking, that the present leadership in the United States was really too focused on, Epstein or Venezuela, or hiding this, or blaming everything on the Democrats, than it was looking for sleeper cells.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think the FBI has really, which is the entity that tries to keep people safe from terrorist attacks, whether it's domestic or foreign, or a mix of both, has not exactly shined recently, right? I mean,
no.
The Kash Patel, Don Bongino FBI is not the FBI that we kind of grew up with that could get stuff done. They have a tendency to rush to judgment, arrest the wrong people, have to let them go, brag where they should be silent, talking too much. Again, the costume drama aspect of it, just insane. But I mean, I think anywhere where there are others, and by others I mean with a capital O. I think there's good reason to be concerned that they will be targeted, and Jews are other. And this was an Orthodox community. And by the way, you mentioned the Arab gentleman who jumped the gunman and disarmed him. Took a couple of bullets for it from the son, who was shooting from the bridge up there. But very few people have mentioned the fact that there was a Jewish couple that grabbed one of the gunmen and tried to get the gun away from them, but they failed and he killed them.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah, they actually have dash cam footage of them as they were trying to wrestle the gun away from the guy, and he pulled the gun back and fired on them. That happened. I mean, just to stay with the Jewish aspect of this for a second, I just want to bring up an anecdote that I think really does kind of hopefully shine some kind of light on it. I worked for a company that was largely funded by Hasidic Jews from Antwerp and Brooklyn. And the Hasidic Jewish community, which is the one that has the big beards and the payas and the big black hats and the coats, and they dress to the nines all the time, very, very, very expensive clothing and jewelry. And these guys were pretty wealthy fellas that that I was working with, they were building a casino in Las Vegas as well, part owners of a casino there. They had their hooks in a lot of stuff. They basically traveled from Sunday to Thursday, traveling around the world, living on airports. Like I went to Zurich Airport for a business meeting, and one of them was sitting in the business lounge. I went out to take a shower before I had my meeting, and this guy was sitting there in the business lounge, and I said, "What are you doing here?" And he said, "I was told to wait. The Hirsch is going to come in." And I said, well, I'd love to see Hirsch. When is he coming? And he said, "I have no idea. He just told me to wait here." And he was sitting there with a bag full of duty-free cigarettes that he was giving to Hirsch, so that Hirsch on his travels could have enough cigarettes to smoke, which smoked quite a few of them. But my point is that I worked with these guys, and they were very, very sort of, different looking people, right, than the normal, ordinary population of the rest of us. And we were at a trade show, and I got a phone call, trade show in Chicago at the McCormick Center, that one of the investors was waiting outside, and could I go out and get him and bring him to the booth, because he didn't know where we were in this huge trade show on the floor of the McCormick Center. So I went out and I found him, and we started walking toward where the trade show was. And I said, "You know what? I should have remembered to bring you a badge. I don't think they're going to let you in, but let me try." And we walked right through the security there. They didn't bother him at all. And I realized, and we didn't stop talking. He was talking to me the entire time about business and things like that. He didn't stop talking for 1 second. He didn't even notice that there were security guards checking people's badges as they went. I had my badge on. He didn't have a badge on. They didn't say a word. And I thought to myself, he is so other that they were not going to say a word to him at risk of causing some kind of incident. And they just let him go. And I don't know whether they were like, well, this guy's obviously not a threat to anybody, or I'm just not getting involved with some Jewish guy with a big beard and a black hat on. I'm not exactly sure what the mentality was, but he was so other that they didn't stop him. And I really was struck by that. All right. There's an aspect to this story that relates to something that we've discussed here before, which is gun culture. And as we know, I don't think it's just the guns in America, although I think there were way too many guns, too many varieties of guns, some varieties of guns that shouldn't be in the hands of people, certainly not crazy people. But there's also this aspect of gun culture, which has existed in this country since its beginning, and it has always been a standout in the world as far as what makes the United States different from other countries. Is a big part of that is this gun culture. Australia is also a frontier country. Everybody lives around the rim of Australia. There's not much population in the interior of the country, and the people who live there have guns, right? For defense, for hunting, for any number of other reasons, they have guns. We know that in 1996 they suffered a massacre. It was a pretty bad massacre. I forget what, 23 people murdered, 30 people shot. Bad massacre. And that the Australian government decided to get as many of their licensed firearms out of people's hands as they could through a buyback system. And I don't remember exactly what the numbers were, but they spent a great deal of their money, taxpayer money, buying guns from people. And people were willing to sell them back to the government. Well, that's 1996. And since then, the number of firearms has increased in Australia. Right now, the number of firearms is about 4 million, which is about 4 guns per person, and it continues to rise. So the leaders, the prime minister and the other leaders in Australia acknowledged this, that they may have been resting on their laurels too much, and that they needed to take another look at their gun laws, and that they were going to do something about it. And he wasn't real sure about what it was that they were going to do, but they knew that they had to do something because of this attack. In 29 years since that buyback and those gun laws were passed, they have suffered 12 mass shootings. I'm sorry, they have suffered 4 mass shootings. 4. In the years before that, they suffered 12. So they think that they're doing pretty well with their gun laws. However, licensed firearms are, allowed, and most of the victims of shooting attacks are shot by licensed firearm owners. The man who was killed, the suspect who was killed in Bondi Beach, is it Bondi? Bondi Beach? Sajid Akram, right, had a firearms license for hunting and owned 6 weapons. He had held the license for 6 years with no issues. I'll put that in quotes, no issues, right? Although his son, Naveed, who was taken into custody, is in critical condition, had been a person of interest to the authorities in 2019 when they looked at him closely to see if he had ties to a Islamic State group based in Sydney. And they concluded at that time that he posed no threat. Obviously, that changed. So one of the laws that they're looking at is that you can get a gun license in perpetuity. And maybe they need to change that law so that now people have to reapply for licenses and go through the process again. That kind of makes sense to me, right? Because people can become radicalized over a period of time. And since 2019, evidently this young man who, with his father, shot these people has become radicalized to a point where he's clearly a threat. So they're willing to take a look at their gun laws and see if there's anything that they can do to close the holes. We here in this country are not. And the stark contrast, and you can't compare Australia's population to ours. So the way that they do the comparison is per 100,000 people. In Australia, they have suffered gun violence at a rate of 2.9 per 100,000 people up to 1996, and 0.88, not even 1%, 1 per 100,000, sorry, not percent, 1 per 100,000 since that gun buyback. So they're doing pretty well. If you want to contrast, gun deaths in the USA are currently, depending on who you talk to, 13.7 gun deaths per 100,000, or by Pew, I think it is 10.6 per 100,000 gun deaths, like 12 times higher than it is in Australia. We're actually doing better. I didn't know this, but gun deaths in the USA peaked in 1974 when there were 16.3 per 100,000 gun deaths in America. So my point, I think, is this. For Republicans or people who don't support gun laws, the perfect is the enemy of the good. If they can't prevent every single murder, why bother having any gun laws at all? That seems to be a philosophy that they take. And even though you would have to have a number of different gun laws to address a number of different scenarios, right? Handguns, assault weapons, etc. A bunch of different laws would cover different areas and close the holes that cause us to have such horrible gun violence here. We continue to do nothing but say thoughts and prayers because perfect is the enemy of good. And the craziest part about it is that most Americans, a pretty stable 56% of Americans, support stricter laws. But Congress won't do anything about it because they're getting paid by the NRA. And if we don't get money out of politics, we're always going to have this problem. But as soon as we get money out of politics, we can stop this problem from happening because we can have sensible gun laws that will greatly reduce, probably not eliminate, a lot of gun violence that we have here. And that's really the main point that I want to make, is that the American people want this. They tend to want it more after a gun incident, right? Uvalde, I think it was like 66%. Right now, it's probably down to like 57% of people want, or 56% want gun laws. And so it's not a front burner issue. It's a back burner issue that becomes on people's minds when something bad happens. And of course, it's more Democrats than it is Republicans that want stricter gun laws. But we can do so much more than we have done to stop this from happening here in the States. And we really should look to the approach that Australia is going to be taking over the next, I don't know, few weeks, a month. I don't know how long it's going to take them to look at their gun laws and say, how can we stop this from ever happening again? And it's not going to be perfect, but it's going to be damn good. And we should emulate that. We should do that here and do the sensible things that we need to do to stop violence from happening. Sorry, I know that.
No, you know what? I'll tell you something. That's a great point. It's got to be more than thoughts and prayers. Has to be more than that. And until we get off our duff and say, thoughts and prayers are really wonderful. However, action is what's going to correct this.
Yeah. And Mark, I'll give you another one. It is known that for gang violence, okay, suppliers of guns to gangs is 5% of the gun shops in America. And if you were to go after those 5% of gun shops in America that are willing to sell to a walker or somebody that they know has ties to a gang, you could probably eliminate a great deal of gang violence. I'll throw out another one. Most guns that are used in crimes are stolen guns.
Yes.
Licensed guns to somebody else who a thief steals. And they usually steal them from vehicles.
Yep.
And they usually steal them from vehicles that are pickup trucks.
Yep.
Yeah.
And that if every pickup truck had a gun safe in it, rather than just taking a gun and throwing it underneath the front seat, we would be so much better off.
Yeah. And, that's a great point, Scott, because here in the neighborhood, of course, I live in South Carolina, very big gun culture here. I admit that I own a few. But when I went to the gun shop, and there's a range that I go to, when I went to buy a gun, I have to go through the background checks and all that, and I'm never offended by it. It's like, okay, this makes sense. I have seen people go into, and the gun shop that I go to, most of the employees there are off-duty sheriff's deputies, and I've seen people get generally offended by, oh, what do you mean I have to do this background check? And it's like, if you have nothing to hide, what's the big deal? And another, your point about pickup trucks, 2 doors down from me, we had a rash in our little gated community here of some break-ins. And the guy had a pickup truck, and he had a gun in it, of course. And he came down, he says, oh, yeah, they stole my gun. But that's okay because I have more of them. And I was thinking, you dumb redneck, you've just put a gun in the hands of the bad guy, and you have no problem with that because you have more of them. So yeah, it's we have to take some sort of action, and sensible gun laws are not an infringement. Everybody talks about the Second Amendment, but the bottom line is that each state in some way infringes upon this universal, totally open ability to have a gun. It is not an absolute. It is not an absolute, and I think that's what a lot of people definitely have to remember when we're talking about guns. And maybe you're right. Let's watch what Australia does, and you're right. They will do something within the next month or 6 weeks. They're going to have something's going to be there, and yeah. And I bet you they also come up with some sort of a terrorism law, something to address that. So we'll see what happens in Australia.
Yeah,
all right.
And before we go, I wanted to add one point about America. Our gun situation. I was thinking about the Brown University, and at least one student, if not two, one was in went to elementary school like next to or very close to Marjorie Stoneman School and heard the gunshots, and another student who was exposed to the shooting had already been in a different school shooting and may have been hit by a bullet. I'm not sure, but there were at least 2 students at Brown who had already experienced school shootings as younger students. So now, I mean, not only are we having this year more school shootings than there have been days in the year, but the same person is experiencing multiple school shootings at the primary level or secondary level and now at the university level, which is just staggering.
Yeah, we actually talked about this in the podcast before, that there was an incident, a gun incident, and the adults in the room didn't know how to handle it, but the kids all did because they've gotten training at school to how to handle a gun incident. Just, what we're doing to our children. And again, I don't want to get into the whole, we look at people in Gaza and go, how could they sacrifice their children that way? Well, what the hell are we doing?
Yeah.
Yeah, look what we're doing. Yep. We need to look to ourselves and attend to ourselves.
And that's all the time we have for today's episode. The Nova Society is a production of Nova Society Media, a division of the Phoenix Research Institute. We want to thank our production partners, Buzzsprout, who hosts the Nova Society, Audacity, our editing team, Apple Podcasts, the largest source of podcast and music online, Spotify, the most popular platform for the Nova Society, and iHeartRadio, your destination for all things music and podcasting. The Nova Society is available on all of these and other quality platforms listed in our description. And most importantly, we want to thank you, our listeners. Without your support, the Nova Society could not be possible. If you haven't already, please consider subscribing on the platform of your choice. It's easy, it's free, and helps our channel grow. For questions or comments, you can reach us at nova.society.podcast@gmail.com. So on behalf of Dr. Brooklyn Ann Weldon, Dr. Scott Gershworth, and all of our production partners here at the Nova Society, I'm Dr. Mark Bound. Remember, the true power of society is knowledge. Thank you for listening, and we hope to see you again next time. We'd like to thank our sponsor for this episode, the Phoenix Research Group, an independent research consortium dedicated to providing solutions to social and political issues for NGOs and international government agencies. Through multidisciplinary, nonpartisan, and unbiased research, the Phoenix Research Group advances understanding and practical strategies for complex challenges. The Phoenix Research Group is a division of the Phoenix Research Institute, the producer of the Nova Society podcast.